The Wilderburg faction is all about attack and destruction. I'm going to tell you all there is to know about why you should be using the Wilderburg faction today. Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Phoenix, and today we are going to be looking at the Wilderburg faction. Yes, the last of the three factions, and the one that I am currently using. So let's take a look at the Wilderburg faction. The first thing we want to look at is the starting hero. That is Bakar. I am not a huge fan of Bakar as your starting faction. I would definitely not start with him as your starting hero. We've talked kind of a little bit about that. Use the League of Order. That's great for beginners with the gathering speed. Garrison is not as important in Call of Dragons right now. I do think that's going to be changing with the new update that's coming out. But for the time being, Bakar is definitely not one that I'm overly excited about as far as the starting hero is concerned. Their faction bonus is also not my favorite when it comes to a beginning faction. But in the later stages of the game, it can be really great. So let's take a look at it. The first one is Legion Physical Attack plus 3%. So that is great. Okay, that's going to work with your infantry units, it's going to work with your cavalry units, and it's also going to work with your marksman units. So I think that plus 3% is a very, very nice choice when it comes to the later stages of the game. Whether that's fighting behemoths, whether or not that is fighting in a war against other players, that 3% is going to go a long way. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but an extra 3% damage is always extremely useful when it comes to combat. The second faction bonus is Destruction Engineering is plus 10%. So that is strictly a PvP type of bonus, and it is great, especially once you get into past 3 and you're starting to actually have kingdom fights. Having that extra 10% can really shape how battle goes, right? If a lot of people are already getting that 10%, you can start burning towers and keeps and barricades and whatever you need to burn to push through, whether or not you're fighting towards a behemoth or maybe you're fighting for control over a pass. It can be really nice to have that bonus and burn it a little bit quicker. 10% can actually be a lot if it's stacked up amongst a bunch of your alliance. So depending on how many there are, this could actually make a big difference. In the early stage of the game, definitely not worth it. Definitely not something that I would recommend. And in all honesty, the faction bonus, if you're a free-to-play player, I would not choose Wilderburg as a free-to-play because you're not getting a lot out of the faction bonus for you. A heal speed or a gathering bonus is definitely a better option if you are completely free to play. But let's go ahead and take a look at each of the different troop types. The first troop we're going to take a look at is the work rhinos. This is the gathering unit, and to me it is the second best option as far as work units or gathering units are concerned. I really do like the work rhinos because of their extra bonus, which is plunder. And with plunder, you're going to receive an extra 5% resources after gathering. And this is kind of a really nice bonus. It doesn't sound like a lot, 5%, but just getting some extra resources can really help you when you're leveling up, when you're building, when you're doing research, even when you are training troops, healing troops. Everything requires a lot of resources, especially the higher you go. So getting an extra 5% can be really beneficial. Now, you have to obviously use all work rhinos to get this, but if you're training enough work rhinos to do the majority of your gathering, it can be an excellent option for gathering, just because that extra 5%, it's going to just kind of give you that extra little bit of resources that you may need to train more troops, do that building, do that research, whatever it may be, and keep you from having to use some of your rewards that you gain from either challenges or whether you're doing forts or patrols or whatever to gain little resource packs. You can save a lot of those just from getting that extra 5% of resources. So I do really like the work rhinos. I think that they are a nice gathering troop to use. The next troop I'd like to take a look at is the infantry. That is the axemen. The axemen are the infantry unit for Wilderburg, and they are pretty much the same across the board as some of the other infantry units. So if we take a look at them, the first one is a smashing time. Increases engineering by 15% when destroying barricades. Again, this can stack with the 10%, which makes it really nice. So if you're using your infantry, which you should, when destroying, then you are going to get that extra bonus, the 15% plus the 10% for the faction bonus. So it can definitely help using infantry to destroy. And like I said, I mean, if you have enough alliance members, this can play a huge part in pushing forward into a pass and defeating towers while taking less damage. It'll all stack up. The next skill they have is their perseverance, which we've already talked about a little bit. This is the one that, you know, you're going to gain that physical defense even while you're losing HP. Again, this is such a great, you know, skill to have. All the infantry have it. It's nice to be able to gain defense while your HP is going down so that you can survive a lot longer. And the last skill that they have is the axemen counterattack. We've talked about this one as well. It allows the axemen to counterattack ranged units. They're only going to deal half their counterattack damage, but it's always nice to get that extra damage in there. So the axemen, it's pretty straightforward as far as their skills, nothing really crazy, pretty generic, just like the other ones. So let's take a look at our next troop. Next on our list is the Wolf Riders. The Wolf Riders are a great unit and probably my favorite cavalry. Yes, I love the ranged cavalry unit, but this one is a little bit more whale specific. And for me, I think that makes it a great choice. So if you are maybe a medium spender or a whale, this option, the Wolf Rider, is going to be great for you. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's go through the skills and see why that's the case. So the first skill is Primal Rage. This increases the number of units severely wounded in battle by 5% for both sides. This is the skill that makes it my favorite, okay? When you're in battle and you are constantly using your cavalry units and you're able to give the enemy an extra 5% of severely wounded, you can change the tide of battle pretty significantly. And I know 5% doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're putting an extra 5% every time, especially if you have an advantage, trip advantage, let's say tier 5 against tier 4, where you're already going to be putting a lot of their units into the hospital, this can play a huge part by getting an extra 5%. Now, the reason I say that it's more for whales is because you are going to also take that 5%. So if you're somebody who relies on a lot of free healing, or you don't have a lot of cavalry units, so you can't just train and train and train, or use resource healing, then this one might be a little bit more damaging to you as well. So I would kind of steer away from it if you're more on the free-to-play side. You don't want to put a lot of your troops in the hospital. But if you are on the resource healing side or the mass troop training side, this can be an amazing, amazing troop in battle, and definitely something I recommend. The next skill is Unyielding Rush. We've already talked about this in one of my other videos. This is your march speed increases when you're approaching the target legion, and once you collide with them, you gain 1,000 rage. This is such an amazing skill, something that makes cavalry extremely fun to play with, especially if you're going in and out of combat frequently. In and maybe you kill a unit, run away, and then you come in for the next one. You can generate so much rage. It resets every 12 seconds, which is phenomenal. So it allows you to continue to generate rage and kind of restart those charges very quickly, and to me makes cavalry probably my favorite troop type out of all of them. The next skill is the Wolf Rider's counterattack. Again, this is just a basic when you can do a counterattack when you're attacked by ranged units, and it deals half that counterattack damage. Again, it's always great. It's always nice to do counterattack damage, and even though it's only half, it can be very, very detrimental to legions on the battlefield. And again, you're doing an extra 5% of severe damage, putting them in the hospital. So you're even putting some of those ranged units in the hospital. So you could be using your counterattack to have that extra advantage as well. Something that is really, really nice if you're a whale, I definitely would recommend switching over to this faction and using your cavalry to your advantage. The next troop I want to talk about is the spearmen. Yes, the Marksman class is very nice. I do like it for the Wilderburg. Let's take a look at its extra skill. So its skill is the spear toss and increases all damage dealt by 5%. That's it. Just all damage done by 5%. There's no conditions. There's no if you're not moving, if you haven't done something beforehand. It is just a straight 5% bonus. That is great to have. I truly believe this is the best marksman buff out of all of them. I think that the extra 5% without any conditions makes you able to kind of move in and out of battle, adjust when needed. It can be great for open field because the marksmen tend to need to move a little bit more due to their shorter range, right? They have a kind of that medium range, so they're going to need to retreat in some of those big battles much easier. It also is great when you're fighting behemoths, right? Most of those battles, at some point, you're going to need to move and do something. It doesn't matter which one you're in. So if there's conditions on that extra damage you're getting, then it's going to have to be reset or not be utilized at all. Where if it's just a straight 5% increase, you're getting a huge advantage to be able to just have that at any time. So I truly do think that the spearmen are the best marksman unit, and if that is your primary unit that you're using, maybe you're using Nico with Kanara, Kanara with Hosk I think is a great pairing. There's quite a few marksmen, marches that you can use, not to mention the 2 new heroes that are coming in with Season 2 in this next update, which to me is going to make them even more game-changing, and I can't wait to see those talent trees. I really think that Spearman is the best marksman that you can use to really generate the most damage output. Now, if you're standing still a lot and you don't have to move, yes, you might lose some, but for the most part, that's not how it's going to be. And I would definitely recommend switching to the Spearman if Marksman is your #1 damage priority, because remember, you also get the 3% physical damage, which we do physical attack here. So you're actually going to get an 8% increase by switching to Marksman in this faction. So if Marksman is the way you want to go, I highly recommend switching. The magic unit for Wilderburg is also a very, very nice unit in my opinion. We can take a look at the skill. I think it's what makes it kind of stand apart. It is a very attack-friendly unit. So it grants a boost to one surrounding friendly legion every 3 seconds while in battle, increasing their attack by 20% for 15 seconds. That is amazing. Again, I love the attack bonuses. Now, in survivability type fights, yes, the witches aren't going to be as nice. Maybe you want the Vestals, which give the HP bonus, but in time fights, maybe you're looking at an elite 6-minute timer. You probably want to go ahead and use this one because you're going to get the extra 20%. You're going to be giving it to all of your teammates, right? They're all going to be getting that 20% attack buff, and there's no real conditions on it, right? It's only for 15 seconds, but you get 20% for 15 seconds, and you're going to keep giving someone that attack bonus every 3 seconds. So as the fight goes, everybody's going to continue to get that 20%. It's going to increase their damage. they're going to do a lot more output. So I definitely love the damage-centric troop units when it comes to this faction. I personally think that this magic unit is the best out of the three. I like damage output. It's nice to be able to push your team, make them output as much damage as possible. Yes, there are times when defense and HP might be a little bit more beneficial, but let's be honest, if you can't do enough damage, you're not going to be able to get through. So I truly do like this skill, being able to get that extra 20% damage for the 15 seconds to help you really burn down whatever you're fighting, whether it's behemoths or even in the open field when you're grouped up some and you're really trying to just push hard. This can be really beneficial. It can really turn the tide. I really, really like this magic unit. The last troop is the riders. The riders are our flying unit, and they are a marksman unit. So to me, they are my least favorite of the three flying units, but I do think that they have a little bit of an advantage in some regards. They do physical damage, so you do get the extra 3% physical damage from the faction bonus, so that's nice to have. The disadvantage is that they don't really have a great commander to go with them. Yes, you could pair Craig with them and possibly do Thea, but I don't think that Craig is as good as Atheist. Unfortunately, there is no flying cavalry hero yet, and so that kind of negates them. But I think that those special cavalry that are range are what you're going to use if you choose the other factions. In this case, your flying unit is marksman. You're probably not going to use them. I really truly think that you're not going to get as much damage out of them because you're not going to get the benefit of using them over terrain unless you use Craig. And I guess you could use Craig, but he's just not, to me, as good of a hero. So it wouldn't be my first choice. If you're going to primarily be using flying units, I would definitely switch and use Celestials. I think that they're the strongest of the three and definitely what I would recommend. But let's take a look at their skill. So we already know the first one, that's that they're flying marksmen, so they can go over different terrain and they don't have to be obstructed by other legions. And they are marksmen, so they're going to do physical rage damage. But their main skill here is the Wildfire, and it increases HP by 2% and hero skill damage dealt by 6% every 4 seconds as long as it hasn't moved. Now, I've already talked about I'm not a huge fan of the conditional damage. I like just straight damage buffs, right? Because I think you're going to get more benefit out of them. There's not a lot of times that you're just not going to move. This is kind of an exception for me. If you're using this in the open field, I think you can get away with it if you're putting them over different terrain, kind of sneaking them around. Maybe you're farming gatherers. Whatever the case may be, I think that you can use this buff a little bit more. The problem is there isn't a great hero to use that hero skill damage with, right? There's no legendary marksman flying hero yet that really can pack a punch. I guess you could use them even if you use like your Nico Kanara. But it's probably not worth it to go down that path, because as soon as you put Nico and Kanara, you can't fly. You're not going to be able to go over those terrain. So it kind of takes the flying part out of it. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend, if you're not focused on them, then I think it's fine. If you're going to be focused on flying, that's your priority. It wouldn't be my first choice. They do a lot of damage, don't get me wrong. They're not as much as Celestials. But, 950 damage is a lot of damage. So you can definitely use them, and they're definitely going to be good in the battlefield. But if you were going to use this faction, it's not going to be your focus, right? You're going to be focused on your marksmen. You're going to be focused on your cavalry. And maybe even your magic troops. This would be a great option for you. Now, you do get the defense on your magic if you are the League of Order. But if you are if you're picking Wilderburg, then you're focused on damage. So this wouldn't probably be your priority unit. Once there is a good flying marksman unit or hero, this is going to be an awesome troop. I really do think so, because of the 3% physical attack bonus. Then you're going to get the extra skill bonus, the hero skill damage bonus. So I do think that once there is that awesome legendary hero to pair with this unit is going to be amazing. And I think that's probably why you don't see one right now, is because there are other great troops associated with this faction. So while it is a good troop, it is not one that I would recommend, especially not for free-to-play. If you're going to go ranged, flying, free-to-play, definitely go League of Order. You're going to get the better gathering benefits, and you're going to get a flying unit that really Celestials does a great job of packing a punch, and definitely worth it. So the Riders, while they are nice, I think they are not there yet, but I do think that they will be a great troop in the future. Once an update comes, when a hero that you can pair very nicely with it shows up, I think you're going to see a lot of players switch and use these Riders. That's all I have for you today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe this video, and I'll see you next time.